kind of a big deal to take a step back and pause and ask myself the big questions, which I know you do with your clients. What do you really want to do? What do you really want? What kind of creator do you want to be? What does it mean to you? And what is inside of you that you need to express?
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand. Today, we're talking with Christina Barsi, founder of Avant Haüs Media and host of the podcast, Be Bold, Begin. Okay, are you beginning to see some similarities here? Her chief goal is to help you get unstuck and create from your purpose. Today, she's going to share her story, exactly who she helps, and why she does what she does. I'm Tanya Eberhardt, founder of BrandFace. We help experts and influencers differentiate themselves, and we do that through personal branding.
And I'm Michael Carr. I'm the COO of BrandFace. I was actually a client before I became a partner in the company. Almost 8 years ago, Tanya taught me these lessons, and it made my company so successful. I wanted to be a part of growing that and sending that out to other people across the world. Now we're the most comprehensive personal brand building system across the globe, and we would love to welcome Christina Barsi, better known as Barsi, to our show. So nice to see you again.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. You were on my show last week, so it's really fun to be here with you on yours.
Yes. And it really stuck out with us because there was this synergy, this connection. I mean, even down to the names of the podcast, which we think, I remember talking about on your show, was really incredible. And having that connection, it just sort of shows how small the world can end up getting, right, when we really start connecting with each other. And I think that's a perfect example of it. So we're excited to have you on again. Yeah.
Yes. And I think you guys will see after we move through the conversation, there's just so many similarities here and so many things we have in common. So let's start with this, Barsi. Tell us how you got started in this profession. And was there a specific event or person in your life that kind of shaped who and where you are today?
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay.
That's a loaded question, right?
Yeah. And I can single out two people specifically, maybe three, but we'll start with the two who pushed me in the direction to actually start, which of course is my whole brand. So that's kind of funny, but those moments I think are so special, and they're the things that get us moving in the direction that we want to go in. So those are the two that I'll highlight. But just to clarify what I do podcast production development, and it's the development side that really lights me up. But the production side felt too big for me to do anything with originally. So the question about the two people become really important. But what happened was I was an actor before, and I was getting blocked. I wasn't enjoying the business. I loved acting, but I loved the stage. I loved the interaction with being with people, kind of like we are here today, interacting and connecting and being in a space where there's a big energy exchange. And when I moved into auditioning for film and commercials and things like that, it didn't quite jive with me the way that I had hoped. And I was getting blocked, and I couldn't do my job ultimately when I did get onto the stage to perform something. And I paused. By the way, I went to school for theater. My whole life was built around this idea that that's what I was going to do with the rest of my life. So it's kind of a big deal to take a step back at that time and pause and ask myself the big questions, which I know you do with your clients. I was trying to do that with myself, which is what do you really want to do? What do you really want? What kind of creator do you want to be? What does it mean to you? And what is inside of you that you need to express? So I spent a couple of years doing that. And within that, I ended up writing a story that was a science fiction noir fiction story. And it was kind of an expression of what I was going through at the time. I felt sort of disjointed. I felt like there were three versions of myself, and I didn't know how to bring it all together. So that's why it's science fiction. There's like three characters that are roaming around that are split between from one person. It's kind of a complicated story, but I had an opportunity to immediately create that story in a podcast setting. And I said, great, let's do that. What's a podcast? Because this is back in 2012. So I was just like, I get to do my story. Let's do that. I don't care how it happens. Let's just do it. And it was so much fun. And I was so lit up. And I had people who were just as fired up about it as I was, that wanted to be a part of it. And everything just came together so easily. It was so exactly what I was missing, that it went on for a couple of years, and we did the whole story, and we worked on it every single week for 2 years, and you can still listen to it if you'd like. But that's how I got into podcasting. And from there, I produced a documentary about that experience. And from that, I got the confidence that I could produce. I couldn't technically produce yet, but I could creatively produce. And then we did the film festival circuit, and fast forwarding a little bit. But when I made the film, an old mentor of mine I caught her eye once again. So we reconnected and started talking. And this brings me to the first person that pushed me in the direction of maybe doing something more with podcasting specifically. And she was like, why don't you carve out a corner for yourself in this business? It's so new. There's still room to do something like that, and get yourself out there in a place like Los Angeles, which is so competitive in the media space, of course. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, I don't think so. No, I'm not going to do that. That sounds like, I don't even know how to do that. I don't really know anything technical. How would I start a production company? But I couldn't stop thinking about it. So going back to the film festival circuit, we had an opportunity to perform live at one of the festivals that we got into, perform the story live before our screening. And I couldn't take any of my tech people with me. So I had to learn how to produce the show technically very quickly, in the matter of like 2 weeks time. So I did it very fast, to the point where I even created some of my own music and was recording that, and like creating, technology I could bring with me so that I could run a board while I was performing my characters on stage. And it all just came together so easily. And I was like, oh my God, if I can do that in 2 weeks, I bet I could learn how to produce a podcast from the technical side. And I was feeling very confident. So I quit my job and I did it. And I just went for it. But the other person that becomes important here is the man I met at that festival that I performed at. He didn't come to the performance. I saw him speak. And something he was talking about, I was like, I just know I need to talk to him. I'm going to introduce myself as a producer, which I wasn't quite yet, but I just knew in my heart that's what I was going to do. And I did that. And he was like, great. And then we kind of moved on. And then he couldn't stop thinking about it. So later that night, he found me again and was like, I can't stop thinking about what you said. I have a client. He was a talent manager. I have a client who should do this. And I gave him all my ideas, and he's like, well, let's go for a drink. And I was great. So we spent the whole night figuring out how to start my business. And he still sends me clients to this day, but he gave me my first client. And I got started as soon as I got home from that festival, and officially opened shop, like launched the first episode, like 2-3 months after that. And I've been going ever since. So that's the whole story.
That is, that's still pretty awesome. So that is, did
Yes.
Be Bold begin at that instant, or did you rebrand at some point, or has it always been Be Bold Begin based upon that experience?
So thanks for asking that. When did I start that podcast? I started that podcast the year after that festival in 2018. I had also recently become a Kaizen Muse creativity coach. So I wanted to use that somehow, because I loved the tools that came with that arsenal of creativity coaching, and I loved working creatively. So it was hard for me to do both businesses at the same time, like be a coach and start a production company. So I kind of used the Be Bold Begin podcast as my vehicle to share the tools and the tips for creative people to get started.
Mm-hmm.
And then the business just became too hard to do even both of those. So I did take a break for about probably like a year and a half, I'd say, from the podcast. And then I re-upped again in the like beginning 2020 when COVID was happening, because I felt like people needed a safe space again to hear, you know, things that were going to make them feel like they were going to be okay. And I knew that I had tools like that that could help with that. So that's how it started again. But it was always about, you know, how to get out of your own way and how to do something that felt really aligned with your core and your intuition.
That's really cool. So do you think that that is a big driving factor to success when you learn to follow that intuition and not get lost in it? You know, sometimes I think in my own life, and there's these gut reactions that you have inside where you're just sure, like you just know that this is exactly what I'm supposed to do. But then I find that people we work with, they sort of lose that personal agenda, right? You know, either somebody outside of that, the dream killers, we call them, you know, like tell you how, you know, that doesn't make sense, or, you know, you can't monetize that, or, you know, how you're going to eat and stuff like that. And many times they don't even mean to be negative like that. But do you find that learning to follow that intuition is a driving force to success?
You said a lot of things there that I feel compelled to comment on, but to answer the question, I do think it is the easiest path to success, or the most natural, the most comfortable, the most aligned. Probably aligned is the best word to describe what I'm trying to say. I think success is definable, and I think it's individual, and I think we all have to figure that out.
I do agree with that. Yeah. And I'm glad you clarified that, actually, because, you know, we should not be defining success in any competitive way, right? It's not these living our life and living the dream that we want to live is not running a race in the Olympics, right? So we should not be comparing ourselves in any way, shape, or form to anybody, even if they're in the exact same industry that we're in. Success is, like you said, definable to the individual person and should be. Although I think we can lose direction a lot of times, you know, accidentally by sometimes listening to the wrong voice, even if it's a loving voice. I know personally with me, it would have, you know, if I'd have listened to my mom, who is, you know, the second most beautiful human being on earth to me, they, you know, I wouldn't have been an auctioneer that led me to being a real estate broker, that led me to Tanya, that led me to BrandFace, that led me to being the Abundant Life broker. None of that would have happened if I had been a mail carrier.
Wow.
So, and she didn't mean it in a negativity. She's just worried about whether or not I was going to eat and pay rent, which is important stuff.
What moms worry about,
That's
right?
what moms worry about.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that's a good point, because I think a lot of people in our lives that really care about us come from this, they're carrying, sometimes we all do it, from a fear place, which I think is kind of driven by the ego versus the intuition. And sometimes we feel like we have the answers, but trusting that is really the relationship that requires continuous building. And it's going to be a relationship you develop forever, just like anyone else in your life. And the ego is the default thing, because a lot of us in society kind of helps us with this, where, you know, it shows us and teaches us over time that you can get success by focusing on these things that are quote unquote ego driven, just for the sake of this part of the conversation. And they will work, you will get there, but it may be really painful. You may be really drained, and you may find yourself feeling unfulfilled and not sure why, because you did all the things you set out to do and you quote unquote have success. So why does it feel so bad? And that's where things get really like confusing. And we have to kind of recircle and talk to people like you, or spend time with ourselves, or whatever works for you, what stage of the process you're in and what works for you. But I think that's what happens. And we all will go back and forth on it at times, because life circumstances will come in and dictate which default we're going to lean into and trust.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. It's almost like learning to hear it.
That's so true. That's so true. And, you know, just so you know, we have one other point of familiarity here, Barsi. I too went to theater school.
Oh,
I did. And I lasted about 6 months. Well, I went to a community college first and had a great time there. And then I moved on to a bigger college and got there and realized 6 months in, it wasn't for me. It just wasn't my cup of tea. So I went on to other things only to realize that the business we're in now, and same for you, you didn't leave acting, you just turned it into a different position, right? Because we speak, we are on the stage. You are helping people produce. You still spend some time in front of the microphone / camera, right? You are behind the microphone / camera as well. So we just kind of take those same core things that we really are passionate about, and we just twist them and turn them a little bit, right?
yeah. And once I gave myself permission to do that, so much more opportunity shows up because you realize, like you just described, it's about you and what you like to do, and how you express it can change over time.
Right.
Sure.
I may get on stage again at some point if I feel like it, but it doesn't have to be so linear.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I look at it this way. You are in fact on stage every time you do your own podcast.
Yeah.
Because you are, it's not like you're pretending to be someone else, but you are showcasing your own knowledge, your experience, your expertise. You're sharing advice with others. You are a thought leader in that regard. And that's not too far removed from acting.
I would agree. And thank you
Show
for
business. Let's
for
call it
saying
show business all the way around, right?
Yeah.
That's very true. And I think we just don't ever really, like, wherever a passion starts to grow, wherever there's a seed, it ends up to be a seedling at least somewhere, right? If not a full grown tree.
Yeah. And it's true. Like in order to move through life, we have to use ourselves, right? We have to use things that we do well, and it can translate into so many different facets. And yes, acting is much like that. We think of it as being someone else, but the reality is we're pulling from our own experiences, and we're sharing our emotions openly with others to share
Great
with
way
us.
of putting it, because
I like that
that's another thing we're
sure.
doing right here, right now.
Right.
And that's part of being on a stage, if you will, because this is just another stage. That is part of what we do as entertainers, as people who, are hopefully thought of as thought leaders, right? It's really what we do. And I love that. And to take that, what you've learned to help other people do that same thing, that's where the magic comes in, I think.
That's what I'm
Definitely.
most passionate about, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can tell.
Yeah, you can. That comes out in you. And look, that's a great place to be. Like, honestly, that's what I love the most about what we do, period. Like what I do in every facet of my life, the real estate business that I grow every day based on the BrandFace principles. And then the people I work with in BrandFace, it's always the same thing. I'm just trying to help people do and achieve the things that they want to do and achieve as best as I possibly can, and direct and help them to get that. I got to ask this question, like what do you think is the number one major thing that holds people back from living their purpose?
I think it comes back to that trust factor. I think trusting ourselves is one of the hardest things to do when we don't have practice. And even when we do, it can still be really hard depending on what's going on around us. I think we work against ourselves quite a bit. And I'm generalizing, of course, but we need to create environments for ourselves that support our well-being, and we need to trust that we're worth that. And a lot of that comes back to all kinds of things, like blind spots and what areas of self-worth we need to grow into, or trusting our the thoughts in our minds and our intuition and all of the things. But I do think that most of us get in our own way at some point.
I would definitely think that is true. I know I do.
Mm-hmm.
There's many times that I know specifically I should not be. It happened just the other day. I don't do anything on the Sabbath. That's just the way it is, right? That's my belief system. And I devote that time to the Lord. So last Saturday, not this past Saturday, but Saturday before, I just happened to go to the junk drawer and I can't find the keys to my truck. And I spent the next 2 hours tearing the house apart, trying to get to the keys of my truck. And finally I sit down and I'm like, you know what? like I am torturing myself for no reason. I had another set in my truck. I didn't have, and then I look back on it, and then every day since, I'm like, you idiot, like you just got in the way of yourself for no reason, wasted 2 hours that you could have been reading or doing something positive, or you know what I mean? Worried about finding some set of keys you don't even need. And I thought,
That's
how many
amazing.
times do we do that as human beings? And we sacrifice the important for the immediate, and we should not do these things. But it just goes to show that even when we know from a point of reason and sanity, we shouldn't do these things, we still do them sometimes and get in our own way. So hopefully people get something from this.
That's such a great example.
That was a good example. That was great. Okay. So it's come to the part of the show now, Barsi, where we get to ask you 5 very important questions about your personal brand.
All right.
And here's the first one. What sets you apart from others in your industry?
I really do think it's that nurture piece. I'm all about building that foundation, and everyone that works with me has to uphold that culture of making a safe space, creating an opportunity for people to trust their creativity so they can be creative, so they can have an open channel for trusting the reason they showed up in the first place. Because that's a very up and down experience going through figuring out what your message is. It's a lot like branding. And I think that's why we have so much synergy. It's a lot of that foundation work is very similar, I think, to working with an individual and trying to figure out what they're all about. It's kind of the same thing. It works for brands too, like bigger companies, but we really have to tap into that core and spend time with each other as humans. And it's human first for sure. And all that monetization, I'll do all that stuff we'll get to. But that foundation will make sure you don't have cracks in your process as you go. And I do take my time in that part of the process. So people kind of have to be ready for that to work with me, but you will have a long career in it with your show if you do spend time doing that. So I think the longevity, the big picture, we consider all of that as we're creating the show and figuring out what the best system is so that you don't get burnt out. All of these processes that we put in place so that you are completely set up for your defined success.
Love it.
I do too.
All right. Who do you serve? Who's your ideal customer?
I love small business owners. I love creative entrepreneurs is what I call them. That could be anyone really, because we're all creative, but I say it that way because not everyone identifies as quote unquote creative or an artist, but you might have a business and it may be that you want to become a writer, or you might want to create a platform for yourself in an area that is creative. So someone who's open to that kind of experience, and then small business owners and coaches, that could be so many different types of people, but an individual who feels like they have a small business that they want to niche out and expand and become the voice in their area. That's basically who we serve.
Okay. Now, number 3, how do you serve them?
I think that answer was baked into part 1. That question. It's really concierge service where we do a lot of the process for you so that you can focus on really leaning into your truth. And we'll help you excavate that and create a system and process that you can show up for that is tried and true, and will get you to the next step and the next step and the next step. And we try to make it really easy and fun too.
I think that's the key.
Absolutely.
Right? Because if it's just not fun, we're just not going to do it very long.
Yes.
Very true.
So
Number 4, what qualifies you to serve them?
Well, I think honestly, having that creativity coaching background helps so much in being a really good guide for that foundational part. And being an artist and creative person myself, going through the process of creating a film, which is an interesting, that's a whole nother creative process, but it has a lot of moving parts. So my background, I think, runs the gambit of a lot of the pieces you need to put something like a full show together, from the technical, the production side, having perfect sound, and setting you up for success and systems, and then being creative myself and really passionate about people expressing themselves, I think is key.
For sure.
Love it. Okay. Last question and our favorite. How does it make their life better?
Well, hopefully they are enjoying the process like we touched on a moment ago. Hopefully it's fun. Hopefully it's an outlet. Hopefully it is marching you towards the goal you showed up for. Like, for example, one of my clients wanted to she wanted to write a book, basically. She wanted to become known for memoir writing, but all of the publishers were sending her away and saying, we don't know who you are, so go do something so that we have an example of your work. And instead of writing a whole bunch, she created a podcast with, I got to help facilitate that. And we made sure that it was super tailored to what she wanted to create. And it sounds like a memoir. And we've done it now for about 3 years. And she just sold her first book deal, and she's writing her second. And she's now regularly writing for HuffPo. And it all worked, which was like the beautiful thing.
That's awesome.
About that process. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep. That is good. That's good stuff. So Barsi, tell us and the listeners, what's next for you?
I am leaning more into that core piece that we talked a lot about today, which is the trust, the individual, and how to move through our own blocks and how to start something with a process that is supported. A lot of us are like, I want to do something different now, especially with the world we're living in. We've had a different experience than we've ever had, a lot of us. And we're like, I don't want to go back to that 9-to-5 job, or I want to lean into my creativity, or I want to do something else. And I love that space of finding your core. And I'm launching I've kind of sort of already launched it, but we're growing it right now. And it's called Unleash. And I want to create programs and digital courses and systems and space and more safe space. It's very in line with Be Bold Begin, the podcast, and just give people an opportunity to really find themselves and make those decisions and become clear so they can take those next steps towards whatever it is that they feel more aligned to now.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I like that a lot.
I do too. So tell everyone how they could reach you if they have questions or want to work with you.
Yes. You can, if you Google me, a whole bunch of stuff comes up, but you can also email me. It's Barsi, my last name, at Avant Haüs Media, which I know is a long mouthful as well, but it's like avant-garde. So AVANT, and then house, like the German house, HAUS. Media. There's a website by the same name, Avant Haüs Media. There's a contact sheet there. I'm on Instagram at the Barsi. I'm pretty active there. And of course on LinkedIn, just my name, Christina Barsi. Facebook, Christina Barsi. There's also a Facebook page now called Unleash by Barsi, which I just talked about. So lots of ways.
Love it. We'll give some links in the comments.
Definitely will.
Barsi, thank you so much for being on our show today. I love what you stand for. Love your direction. You're just a sweetheart, and we're so proud to know you and call you friends.
That's the truth. Yeah, the synergies are amazing. It's I really like it. I just love things that show me personally, and then the rest of the world, how small it becomes when we put it out there. Like when we think on these things and we focus upon the things that we want, how it is attracted to you. And then next thing you know, the people in your life are people that are in line with those same thoughts. And you are living proof of that for us and for BrandFace. Us personally, we've really enjoyed our times with you, and especially these podcasts, and hope that there are many more in the future. So
yeah. Thank you so much. I feel exactly the same way. And you just said it perfectly. When we do lean into who we really are and the things we really want, then it comes to you. You find other people who share the same things, and it just becomes easy. And it's so beautiful when it works. So thank you for being a part of that for me too.
Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. Okay, guys, if you learned something today from Barsi that helps you or inspires you, we know we did. We encourage you to like it, love it, share it, and ding, subscribe so you can be the first one to learn about the next episode.
Yep, guys, it's all about prosperity. You know, we talk about this, but when we talk about prosperity, we're not just talking about money. We're talking about a true 360 of an abundant life that we want for every one of you. We know it, BrandFace prosperity favors the bold. So we say, be bold, folks, especially with your brand and especially in 2022. Ms. Barsi, thank you so much. And thank you, Ms. Tanya.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you next time on Be Bold Branding.
Brought to you by BrandFace, the only comprehensive personal brand building system across the globe.